How many years have you been fighting cancer and what's your prognosis?
11 years. My cancer has metastasized, so I think more than likely it's going to get me unless there's some kind of a miracle drug out there. But I don't spend a lot of time worrying about it getting me. I spend more time worrying about living right now.
Welcome to Season 1 of Ticker Talks, the must-listen video-audio podcast for all things heart health from a patient's perspective. Don't miss out on the key knowledge that could transform your understanding of cardiovascular health. Now, let's start this week's show.
After just completing an almost 5-year cycle of the drug interferon, my melanoma had returned. My oncologist suggested that I start a biological therapy that would do nothing to the cancer, but would hopefully cause my immune system to kick in and kill this disease. I just finished my 4th and final round of this therapy, which left me exhausted. A week later, I was diagnosed with Pseudo Gout, when my right knee swelled to the size of a cantaloupe. Fluid in my knee contained calcium crystals, acting like miniature knives, stabbing the inside of the joint every time I moved. That was followed a few weeks later by a reaction to the biologic medication that gave me a blood clot in my lung and fluid around the sac of my heart. I woke up in the middle of the night with chest pains and difficulty breathing. Thought I was having a heart attack. My wife rushed me to the emergency room. Lying in the emergency room, I remember feeling so depleted mentally and physically that I looked at my wife with tears running down my cheeks and begged her to let me die. I just wanted out of my body that seemed to be attacking me continually. I recall lying in the ER and having doctors, nurses, and technicians performing all types of tests. As horrible as I felt, I remember blocking out everything that was going on around me and telling myself that I had much more left to give. Even though my body was declaring I was at the end of my rope and just wanted to let go, I forced my mind to inform my body to tie a knot at the end of that rope and simply hang on. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you cancer warrior, former police officer, former basketball coach, celebrated author, Mr. Terry Tucker. Today is the first live episode of Ticker Talks, which is my audio-visual podcast that I share on iTunes and Spotify and Google Podcasts and all that stuff. And it's starting to catch on. I'm really happy about it. It's also on YouTube Podcasts. That's a playlist I keep all these in. And this is a first truly live episode, and we'll be putting it out on the podcast stream later. So this Ticker Talks Live differs from AFib Live because the Ticker Talks, the subjects I'm going to do here are for a slightly broader audience, where the AFib Live show is meant for people with AFib like myself. But as everyone knows, I'm really big into cardiometabolic health and treating it through lifestyle, nutrition, and exercise protocols, and working with your doctor and your medical team to make sure you're on the right dose of the right drugs. So I'll continue to produce the AFib show for the AFibers, but for a broader audience interested in cardiometabolic health and improving all their cardio risk factors and aging well, we have Ticker Talks. And I have such an amazing guest for my first show. I purchased his book on Kindle this week. I'm almost done it. I didn't quite get it done before I got on the show, but I want to welcome you to Ticker Talks, Mr. Terry Tucker. We're glad to have you here.
Well, Big, thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you and your audience today.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we met earlier in the week. We had a wonderful chat. I felt like, we share a lot of perspectives, but I feel like I have a lot I can learn from you as well. And what I want to do is, my audience doesn't have the advantage of having read your book. Okay? So I thought I'd start us off with these rapid fire questions that you can just give short answers, which I think will just introduce them to you in under a minute, and then we'll dive off into some deep stuff. How does that sound? Okay, so here we go. How did you get into Citadel Military College?
I got a basketball scholarship. Quite simply, I'm 6'8" tall, and I had numerous options. I had an opportunity to go to West Point, the military college here in the United States. I didn't think my knee would take that, so I ended up going to the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay. Did you graduate with any distinctions?
I graduated. That's about as distinctive as I could get.
Fair enough. And we've covered how tall you are, 6'8".
Right.
You were an elite collegiate basketball player for many years. Did you play with anyone famous?
I played against Michael Jordan. His freshman year, my senior year. Kind of a quick, funny story. My brother became a basketball coach. 20 years later, my brother coached Michael Jordan's two sons when they were in high school. So my brother's been to his house and got to meet his wife and all that.
Wow. Okay. How old were you when you left health administration to become a police officer?
37.
Okay. How many years were you a police officer?
10.
What was your role in the SWAT unit?
I was a hostage negotiator.
Did you actually have to put those skills to work?
Many times. Yeah, people think we didn't have much stuff, but yeah, we did quite a lot of work.
So I know what your next books are about. As a police officer, did you continue to be involved in basketball?
Sort of. I have a daughter. My wife and I have a daughter, and when she was in middle school and things like that, I would coach, kind of the YMCA team and things like that.
Okay. Who do you admire most as a role model?
I would have to say my parents. My parents taught us, my brothers and I, the value of family, of loving each other, caring for each other, and supporting each other. So my parents.
And how many brothers and sisters? How many brothers?
I have no sisters. No, just boys.
Okay. How many?
2.
2. Okay. How many years have you been fighting cancer, and what's your prognosis?
11 years. My cancer has metastasized, so I think more than likely it's going to get me unless there's some kind of a miracle drug out there. But I don't spend a lot of time worrying about it getting me. I spend more time worrying about living right now.
Okay. Hence, you're on the show, and you're on a lot of shows. How many YouTube channels do you think you've been on?
Oh, God. YouTube, I'm not sure. I know I've done...
Or podcasts in general.
Yeah, well over 600, probably approaching 700 podcasts around the world.
Right. Hollywood, how have you not discovered this man by now? Like, seriously, Netflix is making scripts out of garbage, and this book is just sitting there waiting for you. Okay, so just so everyone knows, as I was reading Terry's book, I actually thought, man, this guy's too good to be true. Like, how is a guy like this coming on my show? So I went and did some internet sleuthing, something I happen to be very, very good at, and he's the real deal. So I'm happy to report that my amateur police skills have shown me that what I'm reading was the legit thing. So what has been the impact of cancer drugs on your heart and possibly other systems of your body?
Yeah, so I have a rare form of melanoma. Most people think of melanoma as too much exposure to the sun. My form of melanoma has nothing to do with that. It's a rare form that appears on the bottom of the feet or the palms of the hands. And when I was diagnosed 11 years ago, I was pretty much told it was a death sentence, that the only thing they could offer me to treat it was surgery. So if we weren't able to cut it out, they really didn't have anything to offer me. But they did put me on a drug called interferon after I had the tumor cut out on the bottom of my foot and all the lymph nodes removed in my groin. They put me on this drug called interferon, which gave me flu-like symptoms for 2 to 3 days every week after each injection. And I took those weekly injections for almost 5 years. So imagine having the flu every week for 5 years. And as I said, that wasn't a cure. That was, as my oncologist used to say, we're trying to kick the can down the road and buy you more time. Eventually, the interferon became so toxic to my body that I ended up in the intensive care unit with a fever or a body temperature of 108 degrees, which is usually not compatible with being alive.
Usually fatal. That's usually fatal. That's
it is.
Something.
As a matter of fact, when it happened, my wife was with me in the emergency room, and the charge nurse pulled her out, and said, you better prepare yourself. I've only seen one other person with a temperature of this high, and that person didn't make it. Not the most sensitive thing you want to say, to the spouse of somebody who's going through it. But I don't really remember a lot of it. I remember waking up in the intensive care unit. So I had to stop the interferon because of the toxicity, and they put me on some biologic medication. And that's where kind of my heart issues started. That gave me a blood clot in my lung and fluid around the sac of my heart. So I woke up in the middle of the night thinking I was having a heart attack. I couldn't breathe. I was having tightness in my chest. I know I've heard other people describe a heart attack as having an elephant standing on your chest. And that's kind of what I felt like, that I just couldn't get the breath. But because of that fluid preventing my heart from beating, as efficiently as it should have, that was a result of the biologic medication.
Yeah.
Fast forward a number of years now, I am on a clinical trial drug that has really messed with my heart, given me a lot of PVCs. I've worn numerous monitors. I've had a cardiac MRI to check for the structure and things like that. And so I'm on medication to kind of help with the PVCs so I can continue to take the cancer drug.
So the section I read of your book out loud, and unfortunately you weren't able to hear that as a studio guest, but this section was early on in the book where you actually described your wife bringing you to ER and how you had sort of begged her to let you die. And
I did. At the end of my interferon journey, so to speak, I was literally in the hospital at least once a month. And there was a point where I remember, I remember it vividly. Where I literally turned to my wife. I literally had tears rolling down my eyes, and I'm like, I am done with this. I am so sick of being sick. Just let me go. Just let me die. And I mean, obviously she didn't have that power, so to speak, but that's how I felt. I guess I describe it like helpless and hopeless all kind of bundled together. And it was terrible. I've always felt there was a difference between living and not dying. And I felt for those 5 years I was on interferon, certainly at the end of the interferon treatments, that I was in that not dying stage. I didn't feel I was productive. I didn't feel I was giving anything to anybody, my family, myself, anything. I wasn't working. So I have a very strong faith. I was like, look, God, just take me, get me out of this. Obviously he didn't, but I think what he did was give me the courage to keep going on.
I know my father passed when I was 12 of cancer, and the last 6 months were particularly difficult. I don't like to describe it as a burden on my family because we were happy to have him with us, even though he needed a lot of assistance near the end. And we actually felt bad because we could tell he was in pain and he was struggling to breathe some days. And, he had a tube in his stomach to eat. He couldn't eat like the rest of us. But I know he felt like you felt. Almost this idea of if I'm lifting the burden not just off myself but others. And I hope that you agree now that you're through it that your family actually never saw it as a burden.
They didn't, and our lives kind of parallel each other. My father and my grandmother were both dying of cancer when I graduated from college, and here I am, first person in my family to graduate from college, all set to make my mark on the world, and I lived with my parents for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mother care for the two of them, and I would get up in the morning. I remember, there was a routine. I would empty my father's urinal. I would take a shower, I would get dressed, I would go to work. At noon, I would leave my work, come home, help my mom dress my father, take him to his office, get him situated, go back to work at my job, and then at 5 o'clock, go back and get him, bring him home, help him, undress, get back into bed, and that was an everyday thing. And I mean, as I said at the beginning, who were my heroes? My parents. My parents, were there always for my brothers and I. I would have done that for 30 years if it would have taken 30 years for them to die because my parents gave so much to us. just the importance and the value of family.
Yeah, that's amazing. I partly brought you on the channel because I want your help. Okay, I have a section of my audience that I have a hard time helping. So there are people that are much older than me and much sicker than me. And they're sort of down in that dark place where you were. And so I thought maybe you could tell us about your 40% rule. And it's dedicated to all those people who've left comments along the lines of, now what? So, and I'm not saying it's applicable to everyone, but I certainly think it's probably 95% applicable to everyone. So can you tell us about your 40% rule? And I realize it's not your rule, but it's a motto you live by. So
it is. And I guess let me preface the 40% rule with a story. Back in the 1950s, there was a professor at Johns Hopkins University here in the United States who did an experiment with rats. And he took rats and he put them in a tank of water that was over their head. And he wanted to see how long the average rat would tread water. And the average rat treaded water for about 15 minutes. And just as the rats were getting ready to sink and drown, he reached in, grabbed them, pulled them out, dried them off, and let them rest for a while. And then he took the exact same rats and he put them in the exact same tank of water. And the second time around, those rats treaded water on average for 60 hours. Now think about that for a minute. The first time, 15 minutes. Now you're just not going to fail. You're going to die. Your life is going to be over. The second time around, 60 hours, which said to me two things. Number one, the importance and the power of hope in our lives, that maybe not today, maybe not this month, maybe not even this year, but if we continue to try to move forward, that eventually our life will get better. And the second thing it taught me was just how much more our physical bodies can handle than we ever thought they could. Now, I think everybody has a breaking point. Don't get me wrong. I don't think anybody's superhuman. But where the 40% rule comes in is it's a rule that the Navy SEALs here in the United States, probably one of the toughest group in the military, they have this 40% rule. And my wife works with a young man who calls me on my off weeks of treatment just to check on me. And he's a former SEAL. And we talk about the 40% rule. And basically what it says is, if you're done, if you're at the end of your rope, if you just can't go on, you're only at 40% of your maximum. And you still have another 60% left to give to yourself when you get to those dark and ugly times. So when you think, you know what, I'm done, I can't do anymore, I can promise you, because I'm a living example that you can use the 40% rule. Because when you talk about reading that story in the book where I asked my wife to die, that's exactly how I felt. And I think part of why I didn't die was, no, I've got more to give and I've got more living to do. There's an old Stoic quote that talks about, why should you be afraid of death? Because if you are, death isn't. And if death is, then you aren't. So, when you die, where you die, how you die, way above all our pay grades, don't spend so much time worrying about dying. Spend more time worrying about living.
that's great. And, on that same subject in your book, you spoke about Chief Tecumseh. And that sort of speaks to me. I don't talk about it much on the channel, but in Canada, we have a subgroup of natives called Métis, and I have some ancestry through that. So I do appreciate some of the history that carries forward from that. But I really like the idea of Chief Tecumseh saying that, write your death song so that you have it ready to sing when you die. And I think that's probably a cleansing act to imagine and prepare for your own death as if it's inevitable. And now that you've got the plan in place, get on with life. It's like you put aside for retirement, and then you don't worry about retiring for 40 years. You just put aside, and it's probably the same thing with passing, right?
I think so. I think I told you the story when we initially talked, but when I found out I had these tumors in my lungs and I was going to have my leg amputated, I went with my wife to the mortuary and to the cemetery and to the church, and I planned my funeral. And because I, do all these podcasts and I speak in person about motivation and mindset and the need to keep moving forward, I actually got some brushback from people who commented that somehow planning my funeral was defeatist. And I had to tell these folks, well, the last time I checked, we're all going to die. As far as I know, nobody's working on a cure for life right now. Every one of us is going to die, but not every one of us is really going to live. And keeping with the Native Americans here in the United States, I heard a Native American Blackfoot proverb that I absolutely love, and it goes like this: when you were born, you cried, and the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. That's what I want. That's what I'm looking for. And I think planning my funeral was really, for me, kind of an act of, okay, that's done. That ugliness, I planned enough funerals when my father died, my grandmother died. You're exhausted from, the end of life part of their life. And now you've got to go to the mortuary and, pick out a casket and do all these things, and you're exhausted. I've done it so that when I die, my family makes one phone call and everything is taken care of. And they can be together, they can mourn, grieve, tell funny stories about me, whatever they want to do when I'm gone. But again, I think for me, it was at least freeing to plan my funeral.
And I think too, it's something they don't have to worry about now.
Yeah.
When my father passed, it was hard to juggle all the arrangements on my mother, and she's probably watching right now, just so you know. But it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for her to, and of course, when you have really large families, people disagree on what he would want.
Right.
So you've prevented all that. I think that's a great idea, and
but it's scary.
Like I mentioned to you, I keep telling my wife what I want, and she thinks I'm kidding, but I'm not. I just want my ashes spread by a lake really quietly, and let my YouTube channel go on forever, and keep a picture of me close to your heart. I'm happy.
Exactly. I mean, My wife and I have a friend who has no family, and he's donating his body to science. And everybody kind of same like you. It's like, oh, no, you're not. It's like, yeah, I really am. I've done all the paperwork. When I die, there's not going to be any body. If you want to have a funeral, it's going to be more of a celebration of life than a funeral. So, whatever you want to do, it's your body. You can do what you want with it.
Well, unfortunately, in Canada, if you donate yourself to science, the government takes charge, and so
does it? Okay.
Yeah. So I'm just not gonna. I'll go find my lake.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. So okay. So how long ago was this last? Let's say when you made your transition from interferon to the regimen you're on now, and you went through that really low spot. Have you managed to stay out of the ER since?
No, unfortunately. I have my treatment now for my cancer makes me hypersensitive to vaccines. So
great.
We all know what we just got out of, this pandemic, and every time I receive a COVID injection, I end up in the emergency room, and I usually end up being admitted to the hospital. The last booster I had ended up being in the hospital for 4 days.
So is it like an anaphylactic response, or?
No, it presents like sepsis, like an infection in your body, but it's not. But the doctors in the ER who've never seen me don't know that, and they're immediately wanting to start me on antibiotics, and I'm like, no, just don't start me. I know it'll run its course. Just give me the fluids that I need, because I throw up, I have terrible diarrhea, it's really kind of ugly. I shake, my heart rate comes down, my oxygen saturation is low, everything it's like almost an entire system shutdown. And we know this, but I have the same reaction, not as severe, to the flu shot. So the flu shot did not put me in the hospital, but it made me incredibly sick at home for 3 days after I got that. So I have these periodic, I swear they should name the ER after me as many times as I'm in there. It's kind of one of those things where, you're just like.
I'm afraid you have to leave a big donation
I
when
do,
you
and I don't
die
have that kind
in
of
order
money,
to get
so.
the wing named after you. You might get a park bench for $500 or something.
There you go. That's right.
Oh man, where was I going with that thought, Terry? Okay, back to helping people in a really low place. Let me give you a hypothetical. Okay, let's pretend we're not talking about motivation and personal discipline. Let's pretend we're talking about something simpler, like just eating a proper diet. Okay, there's a whole segment of our population that never grew up with a proper diet. They were given literally Pepsi in the baby bottle, and now they're adults. So when I have a video and I say, hey, you need to eat a proper diet to treat your heart, they don't even have the context. They don't even know what that looks like. Okay, now let's take that back to self-discipline, motivation, carrying on. You grew up in a family with brothers, loving parents, even grandparents you could aspire to be. How do you help people in today's world? So many of them grew up in either with a parent missing from their life or in a toxic family environment, which is more and more common. And they've never had those people in their lives that they loved, and that how do we help? How do you, through your work, try to help those people? Because I would imagine if I was from a truly toxic place and I was reading your book, I'd like, this guy doesn't understand me at all. So do you agree that's a fair criticism? And
I
how
do.
can you get into those people's hearts?
I do, and I worked with those people every day when I was in law enforcement. My partner and I, when I first got out of the academy, I was running a beat in a marked car in uniform, answering radio runs. It was a really socioeconomically depressed area, mostly African American people. That a lot of single moms trying to raise kids and things like that. A lot of grandparents trying to raise children where. And I don't mean to be graphic, but mom was a crackhead and dad was in jail, and these kids never had anybody that loved them. I mean, their grandparents worked very hard to give them a quality life and things like that. So did I experience that? No, I was incredibly lucky in my life, and I realized how lucky I was. But how do you try to make a difference in their lives? I don't know if I can answer that question. I can give you a story. There was an individual who hung around with the dope boys, the drug dealers in the neighborhood. But he wasn't a dope boy, and he didn't have really any kind of a criminal record. His big thing was he would drive without a license. And one night, my partner and I had developed this kind of plan. So one night we pull up on the corner and the dope boys scatter, and we grab this guy, we handcuff him, we put him in the back of our car, and we take him up to the tennis courts in the high school. And we take him out of the car and we unhandcuff him. And I'm sure he thought we were going to, do something bad to him. And this is what we told him. We said, look, we know that you need $500 to get your driver's license reinstated with the state, so you have a good driver's license. My partner and I will pay that. We also know somebody who will work with you to get your GED. Did not have did not have a high school diploma at that point in time. So we know somebody who will work with you to get you your GED. And we also know somebody on the other side of town that will give you a job. So you can work, you can get your high school diploma, and you will have a valid driver's license. Because if you keep hanging around with those people you're hanging around with, you're going to end up just like them. Now, we knew he was going to say no, and he eventually did. But we had to try, because he was worth salvaging. He was worth at least giving it a shot. I ended up going to the drug unit shortly after that. My partner followed me. About 18 months later, this young man, unfortunately, tried to rob a gas station and got caught and was doing, I don't know how many years, 12 years in the state penitentiary. So do I feel bad about that? I certainly do. But did I try to make a difference in his life? I absolutely did. I can lead the horse to water. I cannot make the horse drink. And I know that's a terrible cliche, but I would tell people, look, there's nothing you can do about your past other than learn from it. But what I would tell you is you can start from where you are right now and try to make a life better for you. Try to eat right. I mean, if you're involved in the healthcare setting, I'm sure your doctor can hook you up with a dietitian that could tell you, here's the foods and drinks you should have for a healthy heart.
Or just come watch my channel.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll help you. I'll answer your questions in the
Big
comments
Northern
all
Bear
day.
will take care of you.
If you don't have healthcare coverage, you don't know how to eat right, got no dietitian, we got you covered here.
Yeah.
So
exactly. And
Terry, I think about again, it's really hard to reach out and help people who come from a completely different environment than we've experienced. And I think the point I like to make is that something I heard Morgan Freeman in an interview speak. I think it was his father who gave him this advice. But if you have a person who's always in a beaten down environment where everyone thinks, fuck the world, just take what you can from it because it's out to screw you over. Everyone thinks that, so that's your frame of reference. What they haven't discovered is that they're in a tight little box. And there's this whole bigger world outside of that box. And all they can see is the walls of that box. And they think that's the world. And they don't know there's a world outside it. And what Morgan Freeman's quote I love is, if you're laying down on the street and you think no one cares about you, people are going to drive right over you and prove you right. But as soon as you put one foot and start climbing to your foot, the next person walking by is going to help you stand up. So you haven't experienced the joy ever in your life of trying to get ahead and then suddenly finding 4 or 5 people willing to help you. So make that first step because they're there. And you tried with this young man, but it was him that wasn't ready yet.
Yeah.
He probably didn't trust your offer. It probably part of him was thinking was a trap. Do you think?
No. I mean, we'd had several contacts with him. We knew, we tried to treat everybody the way we would want to be treated. I had a job to do. If I caught you with a gun or dope or something, I'm sorry you're going to jail, but I'm not going to be a jerk to you because of that. And I always like to talk to the people that we arrested, to try to find out their story, especially when you're running, a particular area of a city and you're there every night. We work nights, and you're seeing the same people. It's sort of like the 80-20 rule in business. 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers. Well, the same thing is true in law enforcement. 80% of the crime is done by 20% of the criminals. And so if you're doing the same thing every night, you know who those people are. A lot of times detectives would come to us and be like, okay, I'm looking for a guy and he's about this tall and he's got, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's Peanut. And Peanut lives here and his baby mama lives here and his mother lives here. And we could tell you, where Peanut might be because that was the area we were in every single night. And we ran that beat for almost 5 years. So we knew the people in our beat and they knew we weren't going to screw them. If I got you, I got you. If I don't, I'm not going to make something up and take you to jail. You're going to go free that night. It's like, I just don't have you. I'll get you tomorrow night.
What, I don't know if the right term is got you the job, but what was your personality trait that made someone senior to you decide this is the guy to be the hostage negotiator?
It was a group effort. I wasn't a singular hostage negotiator. There were probably 12 of us that did that. And it was, for those of you who don't know how SWAT is usually set up, there are usually 2 groups. One is the tactical teams, and those are the men and women with the toys, with the guns and the armored cars and all that kind of stuff. And then there are the negotiators. And we used to always tease the tactical team that if we did our job correctly, you weren't going to get to use all your little toys and things like that. And so when there was an opening on the negotiating team, I put in for it. And there was a physical fitness test. You had run so far, do push-ups and sit-ups. There was a physical, there was a psychological exam. You had to meet with the psychiatrist. You had to take certain tests. Then you had to meet with the leadership on the SWAT team. And then you met with the team. And it was a team decision. If one person on the team said, no, we don't want Tucker on the team, then you didn't get on. It had to be a unanimous decision because we worked very closely with each other. And so when we would negotiate with somebody, there would be a primary person. It may be me. And then sitting right next to me, listening to what was going on, would be another negotiator. And then we'd have 3 or 4, maybe 5 negotiators kind of working the crowd where, why are we here? What happened? What's going on? And so as the primary, you may get a note from the secondary sitting next to you that said, don't talk about his mother. Because the group found out that he had a big fight with his mother and he grabbed a gun and he took a hostage and now he's barricaded. So it was definitely a group effort. And I think what made me good at it is I was curious. To be a good hostage negotiator, you needed to be curious. We used to do what was called tactical empathy, which is, hey, bad guy, help me understand what's going on here. And the important word there is understand, not agree. I mean, if you just killed 3 people and you're barricaded in a house, I'm not going to justify what you did, but I want to understand where you're coming from. So we used tactical empathy. We used how and what questions. How did this happen? What got us to this point? Things like that. Instead of saying, well, Big Bear, why did you do this? I mean, because why questions sound accusatory.
Right.
And so there were things like that. So part of it was being curious and humanizing. I never started a conversation with somebody that's saying, hey, I'm Sergeant Tucker or I'm Officer Tucker. It was always, hey, I'm Terry. And, I'm a policeman, but that's not important right now. If they would ask, I would tell them, but hi, I'm Terry. What's your name? I don't want to tell you my name. Well, what do you want me to call you? Call me Big Northern Bear, whatever it was, call me this. And okay, now we're starting.
I don't have any hostages with me, folks.
That's good.
Just so you know.
So I think curiosity was one of the big character traits.
Because for me, it's like, okay, you're 6'8", you were probably like what, 245, 250 at the time. You're almost a no-brainer for that other unit that kicks down the door.
Well, but that's the thing. When I was spent, and you're going to laugh at this, I spent almost 4 years as an undercover drug cop. And, I did a lot of search warrants where these my brothers and sisters on SWAT had to kick in doors with people that had guns and stuff. So, I love those people. I would lay down my life for them and they would for me as well. So you wanted to make sure they were as safe as you possibly can, understanding that we had a job to do and we had to put ourselves in harm's way from time to time. But I mean, I would have felt horrible, but I was never the guy kicking in the door because in the drug unit, I was the guy with the search warrant. So I was the paperwork guy. Here, there you go.
It reminds me a little bit of when I was a psychiatric nurse, and sometimes we would get people who would come in, they've been off their medication a while. I'm sure you've ran into this. And so their encounter with the police, and then they're brought to acute psychiatric where I worked. They haven't been on their meds forever. They're highly psychotic, or their schizophrenia is out of control. Sometimes they're behaving sexually poorly, let's say, hygiene poorly. So we'd have these people come in and they would have to go in what we called the side room, but was the seclusion room. And we had a whole procedure for 5 nurses to sort of handle this person physically to get them medicated so as not to hurt them. So whenever someone was secluded, there was a person in the hospital called the patient advocate. Mm-hmm. And in a psychiatric hospital, it's a very important position because the patients need an advocate. So our patient advocate was a former Toronto Argonaut, which is a Canadian football team. And he was a 6'3" guy. And I remember my first time working there, and we had this guy, and I was so scared. And we finally got him in the side room, and he's freaking out and screaming. And I'm going to murder you guys when I get out of here. You're never going to get that injection in my butt, and this fellow, I'm just going to call him Big Ed, comes in, He just looks at him through the window. He says, "Hi, I'm your patient advocate, and I'm here to be on your side. I understand your situation. Do you mind if I come in?" And the guy's like, "Okay, you can come in." And he looks at us, "Gentlemen, can you open the door?" So we unlock the door, and the other nurse says to him, "We're locking the door behind you, just so you know." That's okay. And he walked in, and he had a 45-minute conversation with the guy. And when he left, the guy's like, "Okay, you can medicate me." And I was like stunned. I was just stunned by that, because here's a person who was psychiatrically had lost control. So there's an art to it. I have a lot of respect for that kind of work. And I certainly couldn't do it. I'm just way too blunt and say stupid things all the time that I don't.
Oh, trust me. I had a partner who had a master's degree in counseling, and she was from West Virginia, so she kind of had the West Virginia twang and that. And she was great in the drug unit because she could kind of get into the hillbilly mode and do that. But I'll never forget, we used to go on domestic violence runs, and we were officers in Ohio. And Ohio had if you said, my husband hit you, beat you, whatever you said he did that constituted domestic violence, as soon as you said it, boom, that was it. It was out of your hands, and we had to arrest that person. Right. So we would come up to the door, and usually the missus, whoever it was, would come running out, and my partner would be like, don't say a word. Listen to what I'm going to tell you. If you tell us he hit you, he beat you, he shoved you, and she would have this whole litany, then he's going to jail tonight, and there's nothing you can do about it, and he will not be allowed back here until the judge says he can.
Right.
Now, understanding that, what do you want to tell us? Because we had a lot of people that, the husband went out drinking after work, came home drunk, the wife got mad, called the police and said he hit me. And it was like, okay, you're not going to...
Well, isn't it the case, I know we're way off topics at this point, but isn't it the case where even if they just feel like they're threatened, then, like in Canada, if they feel threatened, they remove the gentleman from the house now. That's the guideline now. So if the person who called says, "I feel threatened, I feel like something's going to happen," so to me that would be the worst unit, the domestic violence. To me, that would be the worst.
Worst kind of run. It was. I mean, there was a lot of paperwork. There was a lot of, we weren't there, so we didn't see it. So a lot of times we would make it's like, okay, you've got to go down to the clerk's office and sign the charges, because we didn't see him hit you. We didn't see him do anything like that. And then, you do all this paperwork, and then you go to court, 8 weeks later, and they were back in love again and wanted the charges dropped.
So let's bring this back to health, okay?
Sure.
So obviously these type of homes, as a percentage of the population, have grown. There's a lot more dysfunctional families. There's a lot more heart conditions. There's a lot more people having strokes. I don't know if the cancer rate has gone up. I would hope with so many people quitting smoking it hasn't. But diabetes, blood pressure, all the diseases of poor diet, lack of exercise, probably a lot of it stems from just not having the role modeling in our youth, or, and now we're getting to where we have second generation, 2 generations of it. It's hard to know how to help someone one-on-one who's come out of that. Like, imagine the child in that situation. How do you reach that kid to give him the philosophy of life that you've built?
I don't have a good answer for that. I would say this, I can't change the world, but I can change my little piece of it. And if I can interact with a young man, if I can, when I was a policeman, we had a curfew in our city. So if you were under 18, you had to be inside by certain times, depending on your age. And when you pick up a 12-year-old young man at 3 o'clock in the morning in October on a school night, we had to take that person home and cite their parents. Well, if the parents weren't there, but he was being raised by his 75-year-old grandma who went to bed at 8 o'clock, that's awful hard to reach that kid. I mean, you can, here's my business card, if you get in a bad situation, you can call me and things like that. But I think part of it is modeling. You've got to do the right thing. You've got to have that kid realize, the police aren't bad. I'm a human being just like you are. So, but we all know, I mean, like you say, people quit smoking. I mean, we've known smoking's been bad for us since the 1950s, but people still do it. People smoke cigarettes. They drink to excess. They take drugs. They do all those kind of things. Like I said, I can't help the world. You've got to help yourself. You've got to, have that come to Jesus moment, so to speak, that says, okay, I'm going to turn my life around. And so many people don't. And I'll give you, there's an entrepreneur here in the United States by the name of Ed Milet. And he talks about the 4 types of people in the world. He says the first type are the unmotivated. And unfortunately, that is the vast majority of people in the world. Second group he talks about are the motivated. Kind of a carrot and stick approach. If I do this, I will get that. It's a life simply based on motivation. It's kind of low level, but it works for a lot of people. They can be very happy, be very successful in life. The third group he talks about are the inspirational people. The word inspiration coming from 2 words, in spirit. If you're an inspirational person, you move people with your energy. And then the last group he talks about are the aspirational people, where people aspire to be like you. And I always ask when I talk about this to groups, where do you fall? And I'll tell you right now, nobody ever says they're not motivated. Nobody ever says I'm not motivated. But that's the vast majority of people.
Oh, well, I'll be the first then. I'll be the first. Motivation for me is hard.
Well, motivation
for me is a hard thing. I actually have to consciously do exercises, mental exercises to get me motivated, because it doesn't come naturally to me. And I think that's actually like you said, people are in denial of that fact, but I think, and I think you're right. It's most people are actually unmotivated and in denial of the fact, because denial is a great way not to have to deal with a difficult problem, right? And
it is, but motivation's not enough. I've always said that you need 3 things to be successful, and I always have people picture a 3-legged stool. If any one of those legs is gone, then your stool's wobbly. You're going to fall off it. The first one is motivation. I'm not saying they're in any particular order, but you need motivation, you need good habits, and you need discipline. If you don't have any one of those 3, it's awful difficult to be successful in life. If you're motivated and have good habits, but you don't have the discipline to implement those habits, it's not going to happen. If you're not motivated, but you have good habits and you're disciplined, well, you're going to sleep in and not get out of bed and go to the gym. I mean, you can understand how it's not just one thing. You've got to have all 3. And if you do, you got a much higher chance of being successful in whatever it is you're trying to do. Eat right, manage your health, your diabetes, your weight, work in a job, whatever it is, if you have all 3. But you're right. If you're like, I'm just not motivated.
I think most people have 2.
Probably, I would agree.
I think most people have 2 of those things.
I would probably agree with you on that. Yeah.
So
which one do you lack?
It's a self-examination effort, right? At that point. So every one of us, I call them sometimes, maybe it's a poor term, but for us AFibbers, we have we think it's a heart attack. We go to the hospital. And I call that, you have your come to Jesus moment. So suddenly you're forced to reflect on all the crap decisions you've made. Now this is, with AFib, there's a lot of it who are genetic, and you get these healthy people who just have AFib through bad luck. I mean, you look at guys like Joe Biden has AFib for 40 years, right? He's had it even as when he was really into cycling and that. But let's be real. Most AFibbers these days who have AFib before 60, there's a major lifestyle component. And so you need to, I think, give me those 3 three legs one more time. Discipline,
Discipline,
motivation.
good habits, and motivation.
Okay. I noticed none of those three was intelligence.
Yeah.
It's
Stupid
almost
people can be
irrelevant.
very successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes it works to their advantage,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So we need to look at ourselves. I think what I'm learning from this conversation now to try to help my audience is it's a self-examination exercise. Which of those three do I lack? And my motivation is low, although people would never guess it. And my discipline is also a little low. And for me, when I was finally successful, it was after years of failure. When I was finally successful losing weight, it was years of failure. And so I had to hack. I had to do a hack to get around it. But I guess the point was I was one of those people where it has to really get to its worst before I'll start doing my best. And there's a whole core out there, and I'm not worried about you people because Terry doesn't need to help you, because at some point you're going to hit your worst and you're going to turn around and start doing your best. And that's when you'll be buying Terry's book or a book like it, and you'll be looking at the health advice. I mean, we see people like this all the time. Have a heart attack. 2 years later, you run into them. They're like the fittest person you've ever met, right? We all know those people. But it's the people who sort of just, it happens to them and they get into the rut. And they can't imagine a world where they overcome the rut that they're in. Like, and you've been there. You've been down deep in that rut. In health terms, in the hospital, thinking, you've probably had times where you thought you were going to die and didn't want to, and times where you wanted to die and thought, my God, I'm probably not going to.
Yep.
So imagine someone's watching this video in the hospital right now, and they're waiting for the bag of fluid that was hung with the medication to start working. And they're just watching YouTube for comfort on their phone. Give me something to say to them right now. What message would you give to that person coming from where they are now?
I would tell them to do hard things.
Yeah.
I really would. I mean, I think back to my time when I was in the drug unit. You arrest somebody who was an addict, they went to prison, they got clean, and what happened? They went back to the same area, the same lifestyle, the same friends, everything was the same. If you had a heart attack and you don't change anything, it's kind of the old, what is it? Doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. Things aren't going to change until you change. And what I would say is do the hard things. Do the things you don't want to do. And those little things, and they can be little things. And for example, I don't want to make my bed. Make your bed. I don't want to clean the house. Clean the house. I don't want to study for that test. Probably, people are older, probably not taking tests, but I don't want to study for that test. I don't want to I don't want to get off the couch and go to the gym. I don't want to, eat fruits and vegetables.
Are we ever going to get perfect at this, Terry? Like let's, you're fantastic at this. You've got this on lock, but if just as a personal question, is there something you should do every day, yet you don't do it? Like, do we ever reach perfection?
No, I don't think we ever reach perfection, but our brains are hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure. So to the brain, the status quo, the way things are right now, it's comfortable and familiar and should just be left alone. But if that comfortable and familiar is killing you, your brain is still going to be like, hey, it's good. No problem. Yeah, keep eating that McDonald's, quarter pounder every day. Keep doing that. That's fine because it's comfortable and familiar. You've got to change. You've got to flip that on its side and say, I'm going to do uncomfortable things every day so that I'm able to. Let me give you a quote. There was a football player here in the United States, American football, by the name of Jerry Rice, and this is what he said. Today, I will do what others won't so that tomorrow I can do what others can't. So the things that, if you're stuck in that rut, and we all get there, don't get me wrong, but if you don't change anything, you're going to stay stuck in that rut because your brain's going to be like, no, don't worry about that. You don't need to do, yeah, go eat the McDonald's. No, don't eat that salad. Get that hamburger instead. You've got to do hard things.
How do I set my day up for success? Let's just break it down to one day. Okay. I wake up in the morning. My life is shit. I've just come home from the hospital. I mean, I've got all this illness and stuff. And Terry's telling me to do hard things. And man, I just don't feel like doing hard freaking things right now. I'm tired. I've got side effects from my medications. I know I should be, but I just need one more day in bed first and I'll get to it tomorrow. But how can they just start what is the one habit that's easy to implement in your mind that they could just at least start their day on the right track?
Make your bed.
Just make your bed.
Make your bed.
How long does it take to make your bed?
Takes me a long time because I'm in a wheelchair, so I'm wheeling around. But no, make your bed. I mean, most of us don't want to make our bed. Start there. And I think the thing that you and I are talking about, that a lot of people are looking for the magic bullet. A lot of people are looking for the quick fix. There is no quick fix. There's absolutely not. You're going to do a hard thing today, and then you're going to do it tomorrow, and then you're going to do it the next day. And eventually, over time, you're going to callous your mind to deal with those difficult things. And then when the really shit stuff comes up in our lives, like we have a heart attack and we need to change our lifestyle and stuff like that, the people that'll change will be the people that have calloused their mind, that understand that, no, I got to get on top of this or my mind's going to control me. I talk about one of my 4 truths: control your mind or your mind is going to control you. And so if you don't say, yeah, I'm going to do this hard thing, your brain will be like, you don't need to make your bed. Why would you make your bed? You're good. It'll be there when you come home now. But no, because if you make your bed, what have you done?
Right.
You've created a win for yourself today. And now you go brush your teeth. Okay? Now you've done 2 things that you've created a win for. And over time, that builds on itself. It's not an overnight. I mean, you don't go from being, the glass half empty today to being the person who's the glass is half full tomorrow. That takes time, and it has to do with your mind. If you cannot control your mind, nothing in your body's gonna go right. Because your mind controls your body. Everything that goes on in your body starts in your brain first.
So for those who have just tuned in, because I see if some folks have come in, I'm here today with Terry Tucker, a former police officer, was on a SWAT unit, elite collegiate level basketball player. Apparently he shared a game with Michael Jordan one time.
I did.
And cancer warrior. Terry's lost now a leg to cancer. And he has an incredible mind, an incredible level of self-discipline, and he's here to share his lessons with us. And he also, through his cancer, he's one of us. He has a real problem with ectopic beats and wonky heartbeats, and this is a big problem in our community, right? Is because, cardiac anxiety is an actual medical condition where people imagine something's wrong with their heart and actually feel the symptoms, but their heart is fine. However, there's people like me who have cardiac anxiety and actually have a heart problem. And in our community, this is a big problem. But when I read your story, I suddenly felt my problem much smaller. So I think something we can do, if you think you have difficult problems, go read about other people who've had it worse and get some perspective. I think we live in a world where we lack perspective, and we feel like whatever's happening to me personally is the end of the world. When in reality, there are lots of people who have endured far worse and come out far better, and you just haven't heard their stories, or you haven't looked for their stories. I mean, do you think, like with social media now being what it was, you and I both remember the days when we had to get up to turn the knob on the TV, right? Like I was the remote control for my dad.
Yep, me too.
Right?
Yep.
But I feel like not only are our bodies on a steady diet of junk food, but so is our minds. We're on a steady diet of junk food.
Totally. Absolutely. And I think, I mentioned being curious was one of the things that I felt made me a good hostage negotiator. I think one of the things I've always done in my life is tried to be a lifelong learner, and try to learn. I read, I can't tell you the last time I watched television. I read all kinds of different books. I want to know about things. I'm curious. My wife always gives me a hard time. I have this medical channel that I watch that basically uses cadavers to show different parts of the body and how things work.
I think I know the one. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I'm fascinated by the human body, how it works, how really in a lot of ways, in spite of us, it works. And it can handle a lot of damage and still continue to move forward. But it's certainly, like, as you know, and as I know, there's a point in time where it's like, I can't do this anymore. You've got to help me. You've got to have good habits. You've got to feed me good stuff. It's the old saying, garbage in, garbage out. That works with your mind as well as your body.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think now I want to bring it all back to the person who doesn't know what to do, who doesn't have, they have, the three-legged stool. You need these three legs. Maybe they've just got one of the legs. And I think, the positive start to a day makes the whole day. Like if you have to break things down to one day at a time and just get today right, for a lot of people, you can just see that as a major victory. Just get today right. Just get your next meal right. And you'll like I work with the concept of a win bank. So every time I do something that's right, I feel like I've just put another dollar in the win bank. And the bank is actually a bank of momentum. And then when things go off the rails, I have that momentum keep carrying me in the right direction. So people, their win bank is empty. They're depleted. Making your bed puts a dollar in the win bank. Or maybe just deciding, I'm not going to listen to the friggin' drama videos today. Instead, I'm going to put on some motivational videos. Or like, for me, I like to switch from politics, which I consider junk food media, to something like the Daily Stoic and listen to Stoicism, or people like yourself. So there's so much of that content free these days. And, God bless people like you for putting it out there freely. So how many videos do you have sitting on your YouTube channel that someone could go watch right now?
I think 80 right now. I think I've recorded 100 and some. I drip them out, one or two a week and that. So, but I've recorded probably about a little over 100. So
someone listening right now, if you're too tired to get out of bed tomorrow, you're not feeling well, and you want to start your day right, sometimes you have to give people like a really low victory, a really easy win before they're ready for the tougher ones. So start your day by listening to one of Terry's videos. You can do that right in bed. Start your day with a positive life lesson. Well, I bet your day is 50% better because you just started it with something positive like that.
Yeah, so, I mean, even I knew this friend of mine who, like, he was grossly out of shape, and he's like, I want to start running. I'm like, okay, good, you should. And he's like, well, I don't know, and I don't know how to do this. I don't know what to do. And literally, it was baby steps for him. It was, okay, I'm going to put my running shoes on right now. And he put his running shoes on. Wouldn't go run, wouldn't do anything, but wears running shoes around the house. And then the next day, it was, okay, I'm going to put my running shoes on, and I'm going to put my, my running clothes on. Still didn't run. And and then the next day, okay, and like you say, make those little steps. It's like, okay, all of a sudden every meal I eat is going to be keto friendly, and I'm not going to eat any more sugar, and I'm not going to eat any more fat and processed foods, all that kind of stuff. For you and I, we know that, but that would be hard.
Oh, I can't do that. I had to hack my brain because that's where I learned I kept failing. Trying to make an entire life change all at once. Right. You can do it for 2 or 3 weeks, but then it all comes tumbling down for most people. Right. So I'm sort of, I'm going to fake it till I make it. So I'm going to just do these small changes and just be consistent about those. And so that's, I guess that was my little self-help videos, the four I made, and I'm never going back to, because I'm not a self-help guy. But I
You'd be
think
surprised.
you're right. Like you can build
Momentum, like you said. Build momentum.
you can fake it till you make it when it comes to habits.
Yes.
You can fake it. I don't want to go to the gym.
Right.
That's okay. You don't have to want to go. You just have to go. Just make a deal with yourself that you're going to get in your car
Right.
and you're going to drive to the gym. You don't have to go in.
Right.
But if you just drive to the gym, you can throw that win in your win bank. So you just drive to the gym. And at some point, you're just going to open the door and go in.
Right.
It's just going to happen.
Right.
And you won't need willpower to just do it. It'll just happen.
Right. Yeah,
'Cause
I'm
you
not going
built
to
the
change my
momentum.
diet, but you know what? I'm going to buy apples at the store this week, and I'm going to have an apple for lunch every day. Okay. That's fine. Start
Right.
small. Work your way up.
Yeah. And it's hard. And it's we like to think we can go around and give everyone a kick in the ass and that'll just turn their lives around. But it can be demotivating to try and be motivational. Have you ever found that? Have you ever found that your failure to help someone else has demotivated you? Because I have felt that way. No. How can I deal with that? Like there's someone I care about right now that I really struggle to try to help due to mental illness. And I just don't know how to help them. Like,
sometimes you can't. And you know, and people always want, and this is, I think, a truism in life, and I think you would probably agree with me. Nobody's coming to help you. You think that, you know, I'm waiting for that person. Nobody's coming to help you. You've got to decide that you want to make the change. Now, you and I may be talking about somebody that needs to be seen by a psychiatrist and needs medication and things like that. Those are things way out of my purview. You know, I'm not a doctor. I don't. You're not, and I know you make that disclaimer at the beginning of your show. But I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people who, yeah, you know, here I am at McDonald's. I could have a salad. No, I'm going to eat the Big Mac instead. Nobody's coming to your aid. Nobody's going to say,
no one's going to help you.
Yeah, nobody's going to slap your hand and say, no, you're going to eat the salad. You've got to decide you want to do it. And as you and I were talking about, there's got to be that come to Jesus moment. Otherwise, you're not going to change because your brain is comfortable right where it is. Your brain is comfortable eating Big Macs for lunch every day, even though that's killing you.
It's almost as if it's almost like it's the real exercise is becoming self-aware of your comfort, becoming like we said, if you have the three-legged stool, which leg are you missing? If you're not even aware of it, if you haven't even had that mental thought process in your head, that self-examination in your head of being able to look in the mirror and say, you know what, I don't have motivation. I'm not motivated. I don't want to eat better. Like, I just don't want to. Right? So how can I go about doing it when I just have zero motivation to do it? I mean, you have to have that exercise with yourself.
You do.
No one can do that for you.
No.
So.
No, and that's incredibly powerful. And you know, if people are listening to us, you know, they can't ever say that, oh, I've never thought about it. Well, we've been talking about it for quite a while. So yeah, you have. Now you got to decide whether it's something that's important to you or not. You know, but life is comfortable. We like comfort. We do not like things that are uncomfortable in our lives. That we're just wired that way. That's why if you want to be successful and you have just this much grit in your body, in your life, in your mind, you can be incredibly successful. And I want to say one thing that you made a great point about, that you have failed many times. And for some reason, there's this idea out there that people that are successful, whether it's sports people or entertainers or business people or doctors or lawyers or whatever it is, that, you know, these people are successful, that they've never failed. The road to success is paved with failure. Nelson Mandela, the former president of South Africa, used to say, I never lose. I either learn or I win.
Right.
So what can you take away from your experience? Did I learn something today? I learned, you know what? I really want that Big Mac. Okay. What can you do to change that tomorrow? Baby steps, baby steps, baby steps.
I think a true thing too is a lot of people do not accept they don't accept this as fact. And this statement I'm going to make, they don't accept it as fact. So I'm interested if you think it's fact, because I think it's once you accept this one thing as fact, your life changes. That life is not people think life is 90% what happens to them and 10% how they react to it, when in fact it's the other way around. Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it.
100%. I mean, I may even jump those numbers up, that maybe life is 98% how you react to the things that happen to you. Let me tell you a quick story, if I may. When I was at the Citadel Military College, one year we had a president by the name of James Stockdale. And he was an admiral. He had retired from the Navy, but he was a fighter pilot during the Vietnam War. And he was shot down over Vietnam flying a mission. And he spent 8 years as a captive to the Vietnamese and was abused and tortured and had all kinds of things happen to him. And I didn't have a lot of interaction with him, but I remember being at an event with him one time. And somebody asked him, who were the people that survived that brutality, that torture, that abuse? And he said, well, let me tell you who didn't survive. He said it wasn't the big, strong, tough types that thought that they could handle any kind of abuse or torture. He said those people didn't survive. And this surprised me, this next one. He said the other people that didn't survive were the optimists, because these were people who thought that they would be rescued or let go by Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter, and Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter would come and go, and they would still be captives, and they would die of a broken heart. He said the people that survived were the people that understood what they could control and controlled it, which according to him were just their thoughts and the breathing in their lungs. He said everything else was at the discretion of the enemy. When we ate, when we slept, when we were tortured, when we got mail, when we exercised, everything else was at their discretion. We try to control so many things that are out of our control, that are out of our preview, that we have no way to control. And that's where all the anxiety comes from.
And that's where they'll break you down with denying you sleep, playing music through the night, bright lights through the night, right? Yeah. And don't we do something similar, like, Navy SEAL training?
Yes.
Because it's all to instill really that lesson.
Yes.
Right? Well, and the 40% lesson, but it's how you react to it.
It is.
It's how you react to it.
And
that was a difficult lesson for me.
You can control. Because if you can't control it, why are you worrying about it? There's absolutely nothing you can do about what can you control, and then control that. If
I didn't learn that lesson I'll be honest, I didn't learn that lesson until I was 51.
Yeah.
And it's like coming out of a dark closet into the world.
Yeah.
So if you're in a dark closet, you don't even know it, though. You don't even know it. You're like, all this shit is happening to me. What the fuck? All this is happening to me. What the hell?
Yeah. And then we try to control all of it. And so much of it is outside of our control.
We can, so when you realize you can control how you react to it, that's where you get your life back. Because that's the hard change, I think. After that, going to the gym, eating better, those are much easier changes. If you're still in the place where you think life is what happens to you and not how you react to it, and you haven't developed a couple of tools to help you in real time control how you react to it, everything's harder. I think everything's harder. I think too, maybe that's how we help someone who's stuck in that box. Is, okay, you can't control your reaction in real time, but can you reflect on it and do an exercise where, okay, let's say I was a guy like Terry. How would Terry have reacted? Okay, was my fear realistic at the time? Because 90% of our time, our worst fears are never realized.
Totally.
Yeah. How many times did you think you were going to die and didn't die?
I can't even give you a number.
The fact that you're here, though.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
many times.
Quite often we're reacting to the worst possible outcome that's never going to happen. You go into the ER with AFib, we always expect the worst possible outcome, and we prime ourselves for that, and it turns out most of the time we're just sent home with a pill in our pocket. So, yeah. Wow, man, we've been going a while now. Are you good? Do you need a drink of water?
Hey, I got my big water.
Yeah. I was really impressed with your book. I don't normally go live in the middle of the afternoon, so I guess that's why we haven't had much chat. But there are some people watching, so if you have any questions for Terry, get them out, because I think we're going to be winding down in a minute here.
How's your Gatorade?
I love it. It's one of those trade-offs, I've realized that I'm never gonna not crave something sweet and junky tasting, but at least I can have something that doesn't do me damage and it has some electrolytes in it, and it doesn't have carbonation that will hurt the thin enamel on my teeth. So it's a conscious compromise where I don't feel so denied. So I love my G0 and now this new G Fit stuff. I'm like a walking billboard for Gatorade, I guess. G0. So I imagine you guys just drank the real thing when you were doing your collegiate ball.
We did, but I mean, I think about how, it was so salty, but that's what it was designed to do. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when they would give us salt tablets.
Well, the original Gatorade was actually like a concentrated, salty, crappy ass tasting.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It was, I'd much rather have water.
Do you eat a cancer diet, quote, quote? I don't know, but do you eat as a way to, do you see it as nutrition, a way to treat your cancer?
I do. And, so one of the diagnostic tools that my doctor used to use was called a PET scan. And the way that worked is they would inject radioactive sugar into you, with the idea being that cancer cells have a higher metabolism than a lot of your regular cells. And so it would
they preferentially go to the sugar. Yeah.
Yeah, it would pick up those things, and, on a scan it would glow, so you would see where your cancer was. Well, I'm no genius, but I kind of figured, well, maybe I shouldn't be eating sugar. So I've really tried to, and I mean, my God, everything we eat is loaded with sugar, but I stay away. I try to eat proteins and fruits and vegetables, and I take this ridiculously, I have a shake that my wife makes for me now because it's kind of hard for me to do all that, but it's got all kinds of fruits and vegetables in it, and I drink that every morning as part of breakfast, but I eat
That's funny, I do the same thing. What's in your shake? Tell me what's in your shake.
Spinach, kale, beets, cucumbers, raspberries, blackberries, almonds, walnuts, flaxseed, watermelon, kiwis, bananas. I mean, it is, we go on for another hour. I mean, I always say it's my kitchen sink drink. That's
the one thing, I've actually mentioned that on my channel, is that I try to have my green drink, quote, quote, green drink every morning. It tastes like butts. But the fact that you've made it and then drink it makes it really hard for me to want a bag of potato chips later.
Yeah.
Because I've had that green drink and now I'm like, okay, I've started my healthy meals today. So I have my green drink. I have this green superfood powder that tastes really nice, right? And I have an avocado, cucumber, blueberries I'll grind up in it. I started experimenting with beetroot powder because it's supposed to help lower your blood pressure, but actually it really lowers my blood pressure. I've had to stop using it. It puts me down where I'm tanking. Hemp protein with the fiber. I don't think in the States they sell that, but here it's perfectly okay. And that's similar to Europe getting your almond, like you're trying to get those healthy seed fats.
Yeah.
So hemp has the perfect omega-3, omega-6, omega-9 ratio, right? So I use the hemp protein, and sometimes I'll put in the hemp seeds, and then I'll throw in a cucumber, and I'll grab my salad, my spring mix, a big handful of salad. I'll just throw it in the blender with it. And like, I got my whole day of nutrition done in one drink, all my micronutrients in one drink. And I throw in my glutamine and my, my little amino acids, all that. It all just goes in there. And it just, now that it's done for the day. So now if at lunch, I'm like, I only have time for a piece of chicken and not make the whole salad, it's all, I'm good, I'm covered, and just sets the whole day up for success. But it more importantly puts me in the frame of mind. I'm eating healthy today. It's really hard to have a green drink for breakfast and go to McDonald's for lunch. It's almost impossible, especially if in the fridge you have something else healthy sitting there.
Yeah. I mean, you're giving your body what it needs to be healthy.
Throw a comment on the screen. Thank guys. Great conversation. Completely agree that doing hard things is the secret to happiness and success in life. I'll definitely check out Terry's book.
Thank you.
You should also bring him on your channel. Steve's been on the show.
Okay.
So he has a channel, covers the same material as me. So like we're just friends. We're building a community for heart patients on YouTube. Sure. So yeah.
That's great.
Have him on your show, Steve. Reach out to him. I can introduce you. So
absolutely, I'd love it.
Yeah. So give me a little bit more about your nutrition before we wrap up. I'm really interested in hearing your nutrition and if there's any exercise routine. What's your daily nutrition and exercise?
So I start out with the shake, and I also have an egg white omelet with. I like cheese, so I have cheddar cheese and veggie bacon. That's breakfast. Lunch is real simple. Lunch is an athletic greens powder mix.
Yeah.
And I eat almond butter right out of the jar.
I love almond butter.
It's just, all it is ground up almond. No sugar, I get the keto kind. I do have a keto snack. It's called Keto Nuggets. I can't remember the company that is, but like when I get, I get a sweet tooth, I want something, So this is the cocoa, the chocolate, organic coconut, pumpkin seeds. I call it Queen.
Do you get it at Costco? Is that where you get it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know this stuff.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Exactly. And it gives me my little sweet tooth. And then at night, usually my wife and I will have, a grilled chicken breast and a salad, or, a steak and a salad, or, asparagus, broccoli, whatever it is. And that's what I eat. I don't snack during the day. I don't really do anything like that.
In Europe, the doctors has a saying. They say sugar feeds cancer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They don't say that here, really. They'll probably agree with it, but they don't actually consider it part of the advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because here, the advice is eat your 12 servings of grain a day.
Yeah,
sugar
exactly.
feeds cancer.
A lot of the medicine that I get at the hospital kind of backs me up. So, that's another thing, eating a lot of fiber, and things like that in my diet that kind of helps me stay regular. And is something that, it's not something I like to talk about, but it's a problem. And that, so I do that, and then I use these bands to exercise because I'm in a wheelchair, so it's kind of hard to stand and do those kind of things.
Like surgical tubing kind of
stuff.
Training.
Yeah, exactly that, and I'll do some, like my wife kind of laughs at me. I'll put my wheelchair right next to the stairs, and I'll lean into the stairs and do push-ups on the stairs. So
that's great.
I can get up and then sit back in the wheelchair. It's just a.
Have you seen the wheelchair bodybuilders? That's like a league now.
Is it? I have not seen it.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
I love it.
There's a whole bodybuilding league for guys in a wheelchair and people who've lost their legs and stuff. There's a whole league, whole rule set. It's phenomenal.
I'll have to check it out.
It's highly inspiring.
I bet it is.
Highly inspiring.
Yeah.
On your future YouTube channel, I suggest you interview some of these wheelchair bodybuilders. I'm gonna get you to go hard on YouTube. I really think
I can tell.
I really think you're. Let me ask you the mother of all questions here now. How come everybody over the age of 30, let's say, who's turned their life around or their health around, all quote Rocky 1, the movie.
I love Rocky.
What is it about that movie that sets it above every other movie in terms of a motivate? Like, there's a lot of motivating movies. What is it about the first Rocky?
I mean, I think it was the first time you saw, you really saw the underdog. You saw, I mean, that guy lived in squalor for a lot of people, I mean, little one room apartment, with a nasty bathroom and you think about how he trained.
And poorly educated. Yeah, poorly educated, didn't even talk good, right? He was like, hey,
no, didn't talk good, didn't, but the thing that Rocky had, and I think a lot of people miss this, is I think down deep, Rocky had a good heart. He knew what he needed to do. I'm here. I'm gonna put on my my old sweatsuit. I'm gonna put on my high top Chuck Taylor basketball shoes. I'm gonna wrap a towel around my neck and a hat on, and I'm gonna.
Doesn't that drive you crazy watching people run in the wrong shoe?
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was out there doing it. Yeah.
He did. You use what you have. I mean, we all want but that's, think about our goals. Okay, when everything's perfect, then I'll start. Tell you another quick story. There's a guy by the name of Jesse Itzler who was he may still be part owner of the Atlanta Hawks in the National Basketball Association. And he's married to Sarah Blakely. Now, for most of us guys, we don't know who Sarah Blakely is. But Sarah Blakely is the president and CEO of a company called Spanx, which is a women's undergarment type of, just women's undergarment. Let's leave it at that. And he tells the story. Her husband tells the story of when she was starting that company. He said if she would have waited until everything was perfect, until she had the financing in place, the marketing in place, the distribution, the manufacturing, everything in place. He said, I guarantee you somebody would have started it before her and would be successful doing it now. He said she just jumped in and figured it out as she went along, understanding that this is what I want to do. And I think that's an incredibly powerful story because so many people never get to the point where they never get successful because they're always waiting for, well, I need one more thing, or I need one more thing, or I need to do this, or that needs to happen. Just start where you are. Just start where you are. Start where you are and figure it out as you go along. It's never going to be perfect.
I mean, if anyone's seen my first YouTube videos, you'll know that's exactly what I did because they're terrible. And I still, even on this show, just to put myself out as an example of that, like I still treat YouTube every video as actually a learning experience. Like I tried to do something interesting with the intro to this show that I've never done before in the studio. And I think that's the attitude you have to have is, okay, I know what I'm doing today is not going to be perfect, but can I do it just a little bit better than last time? And then when I'm done at the end of the day, try something new along the way so that I can take the lesson from that and carry it forward.
Yeah.
But I do want to get back to Rocky.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I think you highlighted this in your book, that in my mind what separated Rocky from every other motivational movie is that he lost to Apollo Creed. Yet we all felt a massive sense of victory. We had to get the second movie for him to wear the belt.
Yeah.
So how...
We like an underdog.
Well, is not the real lesson there is, he shot for the stars and ended up on the moon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that the most realistic story of everyone who just sets out ever?
But it's just like what we were talking about. He didn't wait until he had, the perfect trainer. He didn't wait until he had, all the clothes and the latest and greatest. He just jumped in where he was. Okay, I'm going to fight Apollo Creed on this date. Okay, this is what I'm wearing to go run. This is what I'm wearing to train. This is how I'm going to train. He didn't, just start where you are. Start where you are and move forward.
So everyone listening, where can you start today? What can you do right at the end of this video or first thing tomorrow morning? It can be small and easy, something you know you should be doing. Can you make a commitment to yourself right now just to do it and see what happens? Whatever it is, start off your day, pick something easy. Let's each give them an easy suggestion. My easy suggestion will be start your day with a green drink as an easy suggestion. What's your easy suggestion, Jerry?
Make your bed.
Make your bed. There's 2 easy victories that take under a minute that'll start tomorrow in a more positive way. So, and then keep in mind too that, you know, if you're laying in the street, they'll drive over you. But if you start to get up, you'll suddenly find help where you've never had expected. I can't wait to read the last, according to Kindle, 21% of your book that I have left. And
well, thank you for
unfortunately, I wanted to get it and read it, so I bought Kindle for instant delivery. But one day, when you're doing your world tour and your book signing, I'm going to drop by and get a signed copy.
I told you, you send me your address, and I will be more than happy to sign it and send you a copy.
I thank you. I might just do that. I'm hoping I can have you back on the show one day.
I would love that.
And we can go further, or I'm actually hoping more that one day you'll have a show and you'll find me worthy to be a guest.
I'm going to have to like make you my agent, I think. You know, I mean,
I'll be your private motivational YouTube speaker. You can motivate the world, but
I love it.
I think the world needs a lot more Terry Tucker.
Thank you.
And a lot less Jake and Paul Logan, to be honest. Even though I like their energy drinks, their 10-calorie energy drinks. We just need a lot less of that stuff, you know. And I thank you for being on the show today. I'm going to play us out. I picked a special song for you, Terry.
Great.
It's highly motivational, and better than that, it's royalty-free. And so will you stay in the studio with me for 30 seconds after I sign off?
Sure.
Okay. Let's play us out, folks, with this song that I think suits Terry great.
Let's go. Yo, I'm like an addict, do I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, got a really bad habit. If it moves, gotta grab it, fuse like a magnet. Lose, won't have it till I'm doomed in a casket. I ain't playing, got a weird mind. If you work 8 hours, I'ma work 9. If the shit tastes sour, you should taste mine. I'ma stay in power for a long time.